That way? Hey, it's kind of over that way. Yeah. Is that right? Am I still in the right place? Yeah, I think that's about right. Yeah. Bridgewater has a statue. A very serious looking man in a very serious looking coat.
We're talking about Admiral Robert Blake, father of the Royal Navy, and local lad done good. And possibly the most underrated war hero in British history. But who is he pointing at? And why? In this episode, we try to answer that and discover why Blake deserves more than just a statue and a slightly confused gesture. Most people only know Bridgewater as that place you pass through on the way to somewhere a little betterer. But stop and see for yourself, and you'll find a town bursting with hidden gems, architecture, rebellion, naval legends, even a carnival that could wake the dead. It's a town of firsts and lasts and things we're still not quite sure ever existed, like the historic treacle mines at Dumble. Welcome to Bridgewater, but don't tell too many people about it because the roads are busy enough already. Robert Blake was born in Bridgewater in 1598, which makes sense really. It's near the sea, but not annoyingly so. Close enough to smell the salts, but yet far enough not to get your boots wet. He went to Oxford, where he mostly read books and got annoyed at authority, a skill set that's useful around here. He wasn't from a military family and didn't own a sword or even a musket, but then the English Civil War broke out, and Blake chose Parliament over the King, because if there's one thing Bridgewater loves, it's sticking it to authority, ideally with cannon fire. Blake first made a name for himself by holding the town of Lyme Regis under siege for nearly a year with almost no food. That's right, the man basically won a war on snacks. Blake introduced proper naval tactics like line formations, blockades and coordinated fire, all while dealing with mutinies, storms, diseases, underpaid crews and the Dutch, who are actually very good at sailing. He fought and won battles from Portugal to North Africa. He enforced Cromwell's power across the seas and helped turn England from a soggy island into a serious naval force. But despite all this, Blake isn't a household name. There's no Trafalgar Square for Blake, no Hollywood movies, just that one statue in Bridgewater pointing at... well, we're still figuring that one out. There he is, right in Bridgewater town centre. Admiral Robert Blake, immortalised in bronze, standing proud, finger extended like he's just spotted something very important. Or mildly disappointing, but what exactly is he pointing at? Well, he's not pointing towards the sea. That would make sense, naval hero and all, but no. He's also not pointing at the Blake Museum, which would be handy for tourists. And he's definitely not pointing at Greg's, even though it's Bridgewater, so statistically, that would be a strong option. Some say he's pointing towards the River Claret. Others would say he's pointed towards London. As if to say, you're Nelson, you've been nowhere without I. Because he could just be pointing at the traffic. Or he could just be pointing at somebody who still owes him money from the 1600s. There, that should cover it for it. Allowing for inflation.
There's no official explanation on the plinth, no helpful arrows saying Blake points here, no footnote, nothing. And while the pose is commanding, you do start to wonder if he's less strategic genius giving orders and more man at bus stop checking which way the wind's blowing. So you know what? Let's ask someone.
Do you know? Do you know? Do you know? Do you know?
We decided to ask someone who might actually know, the people down at the Blake Museum. Surely they can shed light on whether Bridgewater's most famous son is dramatically delivering a message to the people, or just aggressively indicating a pigeon about to drop something on him. But not before we get a hot chocolate. You can't investigate history without chocolate. We met up with someone from the museum. A local historian, part-time guide, full-time Blake enthusiast. And naturally the first thing we asked was...
So tell me, Mike, where is Robert Blake actually pointing to?
Their answer? A pause. A thoughtful look. And then...
now that no one really knows, State.
Which is, in its own way, perfect, because if there's one thing Bridgewater loves more than history, it's a good mystery. But the museum itself is full of answers. Inside you'll find artefacts from Blake's life, maps of his naval campaigns, and explanations of how he changed the way wars were fought at sea. There's even a replica ship's wheel, sadly not operational, although we did ask. Sort of.
we learnt about Blake's battles with the Dutch, and about his labour blockade with Spain, and how he pioneered naval tactics that we still use today, unlike tic-tacs which weren't available back then, like keeping your ships in a line and not letting them crash into each other, which turned out to be quite effective. Unlike this train, which appears to be about to crash into the boat itself, even though trains hadn't been invented at that stage. Blake was a Puritan, a Republican, and absolutely not a fan of luxury at all, except for having this cricket on his check. He also refused to accept bribes, which made him heroic to some, but difficult to work with for others. Firstly though, let's finish looking around the museum. I'm off to find a fridge magnet, because after all, what else would say naval domination other than by a fridge magnet and something stuck to your milk? Wow, look at that! There's an Admiral Blake museum here even then! That's incredible! You get the museum first, and then, very handily, on comes Robert Blake. Alright, what a chance you bought that? Oh, you're not on a Blake, are you? Can't be, because, haircut's different.
Robert Blake may not have a blockbuster film, a famous column, or a statue that makes any geographical sense, but he should be a household name. Because before Nelson, before Churchill, before the Royal Navy had proper uniforms, there was Blake, inventing how Britain would dominate the seas for centuries.
He was the first to bring in a formal naval code, and also the first to enforce discipline aboard a Royal Navy ship, and across its entire fleet. He understood naval strategy at a time when most people just hoped for a strong wind and a bit of luck. He basically turned floating chaos into coordinated power, and did it without an inch of naval training whatsoever. He even blockaded up Spain or, can't get in. And he fought off barbary pirates. He even took away the Spanish ports, showing their treasure fleets. This was bold, aggressive, and in Cromwell's time, extremely politically useful. Blake wasn't just a war hero. He was propaganda with a cannon. Boom! 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 This is the bit that sucks. When Charles II returned to the throne, they dug up Blake's body, which had been buried in Westminster Abbey no less, and threw him into a pit. Literally, a pit at St Margaret's, which is over there somewhere now, the shop. That was how gratitude looked back in Restoration England. And here we are now, all these years later, surrounded by all the memories of these people who have gone before us, such as Glaston Litter. So next time somebody says to you, Bridgewater, what's there? Just cut a paper somewhere in the distance confusingly and say, Robert Blake, and then walk off dramatically. It works every time. Look, I'll show you. Oh, here's that gentleman earlier on. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me. It won't take long, so it'll take a second. Would you please say, Bridgewater, what's there?
Bridgewater, what's that?
Robert Blake. So what do we do with a man like Robert Blake? He wasn't flashy. He didn't wear big hats or shout a lot. He didn't even have a TikTok account. He didn't even have a dramatic death at sea. He just died of old age on his way home. But somehow, he still managed to become one of the greatest naval commanders in British history, in a town known more for its carnival.
Blake stood for principle, precision, and getting things done, even when everyone around you was slightly useless. And while the world forgot him, Bridgewater didn't. There's a museum, there's a garden, there's a school, and yes, there's that statue, pointing off into history, or possibly towards the takeaway or to the nearest Turkish barber.
Is he pointing at legacy?
Is he pointing to the horizon? Or is he pointing at somebody who mocked his Puritan haircut? We may never know. But maybe that's the point. The mystery keeps us looking, keeps us asking, and keeps us telling the story. So next time you're passing through Bridgewater, and let's be honest, you've probably tried before, take a moment. Visit the museum, look at the statue, and remember the man who turned a fleet of soggy boats into the foundation of naval warfare. So Mike, tell me, where actually is Admiral Blake pointing?
Now, he's actually pointing up to sea.
Is it?
He's actually pointing up to sea as if he's soliloquizing, which is talking to oneself. Okay? And he's actually saying, I have driven off the enemies of my country, and they shall no more defy us.
If you enjoyed this, give us a like, drop a comment telling us who you think Blake is pointing at, or maybe what you think he's pointing at, and subscribe to the channel for more hidden history, community legends and slightly sarcastic storytelling, right here at Sedgemoor FM.